In the previous video, we put together the functionality for the profile and for the login, but we saw that there are a few quirks that in this video we'll fix. So if you remember, we now store a token here in local storage, and if we now log in, we don't get automatically redirected to the profile, but if we refresh the page, then we get the updated menu with these values. But now we can still go back to login, which doesn't make sense. And also if we are not logged in, we can still go to profile and see this empty page, which is not the best user experience. So we're going to start to add some redirects to the root definition. So I have app.js open here, and I'm going to bring in redirect from React router DOM. And because we have access to the session property, we can use that in the components for the root. Now I'm going to extend this window so that it is full screen because I want to use the entire screen as state. Okay, so let's take a look at login. Login should only be visible if the session does not exist. So we can check for that, right? So instead of just saying component login page, we should add some logic in here. We should say this.props.session and this.props.session.me. So if it exists, then we want to call this redirect component and redirect to /profile. Otherwise, so if there's no profile, then we want to load the login page component. Now, if I save this, and if we go back to the application itself, you will notice that this won't really work because there's an error in the console that says invalid prototype component of type object supplied to root expected a function. So in this case, if we don't specify the name of the component for the router, but instead we provide some logic, we need to provide a callback function. So we need to say callback function, and I use the arrow function here, and now this should work. Now similarly, for the profile, we can implement a logic whereby we say if this.props.session and this.props.session.me, so if that's equal to null, then I would like to redirect to /login, otherwise display the profile page. So let's hit save and let's see if this now works. So I'm going to go back to the browser here, and what we'll do is make sure we don't have a token. So we don't have a token. So if I go to profile now, I now automatically get redirected to the login page. Perfect. That is exactly what we wanted to achieve. And what happens when I try to log in? But that still doesn't work. We still need to refresh this page. So why is this happening? So this is the result of a few asynchronous actions that we are missing. So if I open login, what we do here, we push this profile to the history, but we need to do something in here. We need to make sure that when someone logs in, so when we set the token, we requery for this session, we recreate that me object. So we need to somehow do this here. So how could we do that? Well, let's go back to app here and remember that for creating the higher order components, we not only pass in the session data, but we also pass in the refetch. And when we created this component, I said the refetch will allow us to requery for a piece of data after a triggered action from the user. So what is this triggered action now? That is the login. So when someone hits the login button, I want to rerun this query. So how do I do that? So going back to app, what I want to do is not only display the login page, but pass in the refresh attribute to the login page. And because we have already created a higher ordered component from app, we can now access this.props.refetch. And because we now pass the refresh attribute to login page, we can access that here as well. So we can say this.props.refetch. But this won't work yet because we need to make sure that we not only extract the history, but the refresh attribute, and we pass that onto the login form as well. So we pass that on as an attribute. Okay, so let's delete this token and let's log in again. Okay, and now we have the redirect to happen. So this is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. And now if we keep on refreshing the profile, we get this profile here. And if we go back to login, we automatically get redirected to the profile. And if we don't have a token, if we are the profile, we get redirected back to login. Now, we could make things slightly better for ourselves, and in our login, instead of calling this.props.refresh, we could make this an async operation and just make sure that we wait for this refetch to happen, because this is how it should be, right? We want to make sure that this line here completes before you go to the profile. So let's give this a go, and that still works. Excellent. So if we delete the token, that's our logout. For now it's kind of manual, but things work as they supposed to be. Okay, so what we'll do next is implement a logout feature. So now we have login, we have register, so it's time to implement the logout functionality, and that's what we'll do in the next video.